we go. Okay. It looks like we've got Dave here. Uh, admit. See if we can bring him on. Hey there, Dave. Can you hear me? It's good to see you. How are things? No, no worries. I'm really glad you could be here today. Thank you again for agreeing to this. Let me first ask everybody in chat, can you hear me and can you hear Dave right now? Can't hear him, says. Okay, so let's get a got to add a new source to OBS real quick. Hang on, Dave. Sorry about that. Uh, Audio output capture. Zoom audio. Okay. And that should be, let's see, should be right there. Excellent. Uh, can you hear
All
us
good.
now, chat? Dave, can you say something?
Good day. How you doing? I like
All
the
right.
library.
Excellent. Yeah, we're good. We're good. What's that,
Nice.
Dave?
I said I like the library. That's all.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, this is my office here. And then I also have here, I was telling you about this via email, the big troodontid tooth.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's ginormous.
I
Yeah.
know, right? And I
Yeah.
could probably print it even
Yeah.
bigger than this, but
Uh,
yeah, the
but that's
the
cool
most
just to
recent.
show the tentacles.
I know,
I like
right?
it.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll be talking about these later, but yeah, yeah. There's a Canadian team that made this available on Morphosource, so I was able to snag it off it there.
Uh,
Uh,
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. I'll get it painted at some point, but anyway, let me pull up my questions right here, and
Yeah, I
yeah,
was tracking them down too.
awesome. Yeah. So everybody in chat, this is Dr. David J. Varricchio, who's a professor of paleontology at Montana State University, um, where I did my undergrad, and Dave was actually my undergrad advisor, so he had to put up with me for too many years. Um, but yeah, he's very graciously agreed to be our first interviewee of the year on paleontologizing. Dave, I'm hoping to do an interview with a colleague pretty much every week for the rest of the year. So
Nice.
thank you for
Uh-huh.
being our
Cool.
first one. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Happy
Yeah.
to talk about Troodon.
Yeah,
Woohoo.
absolutely. Very excited about that. We just got done watching that episode of Paleo World from 1995 about Troodon
Uh-huh.
as kind of,
Uh-huh.
some background info for everybody. Um,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, yeah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how did you end up in dinosaur paleo in the first place? What
Uh,
drew you to the science?
I guess, we had a farm when I was a kid. I liked animals in Pennsylvania, so there's lots of rock quarries. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
some sort of mix of those two. Um, yeah, I guess I kind of like just the idea of journeying back in time, that you could kind of look at, unpeel rock layers and you're looking at the past. So that was just kind of an exciting adventure into the past.
Gotcha. Did you have a particular interest in dinosaurs as a kid, or just kind of nature in general?
I mean, I certainly like not super crazy, but I mean, I certainly had toy dinosaurs and some
Mm-hmm.
Pleistocene mammals too. But yeah, I mean, I
Nice.
like dinosaurs. I guess I never really thought about it as a career. Um, for a time, I thought, oh, I'd be a zoologist.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I got to high school, I thought more practical. Like, oh, what do people have jobs in? And I was geared towards engineering. I was good at math and physics, so I thought I'd kind of head in that direction. But I still had this interest in geology, so I took intro geology as a freshman, and that was one of the options as an engineer was geology.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like given the choice of field trips where you could like nose around for fossils, or like playing in a lab with electronic gizmo. I was like, no, I don't
Uh-huh.
want to do that. Give me the field trip. So that was easy sell for geology.
Uh-huh.
um and then I don't know how much detail you want here. And then
No, this is great. Yeah.
when I was a freshman, people that were graduating were getting hired by oil companies. But by the time I graduated, those jobs had gone away. And it
Right.
was sort of like, okay, if I'm going to pursue geology, um, I need to put an effort into it. And it's like, what do I actually want to study? And I debated planetary geology or paleontology.
Huh.
Um, and I kind of like the idea that paleontology, I like the physical aspect that you can hold the rocks and hold the bones, and that just seemed way more appealing than
It's a
planetary
lot easier
geology.
to
But
do field work in paleontology than planetary geology, I imagine. You
yeah,
don't really need a
yeah,
spaceship for that. Yeah.
yeah. Eventually, that'll be really cool, though. The planetary. I mean, the stuff on Mars is planetary paleontology. They're like looking around, roving around, looking
Sure.
for
Looking
signs
for
of
fossils.
life.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really like a paleo prospecting trip in a way.
Um. So I think it's pretty well known that you were Jack Horner's first graduate student. How did you get involved with that program and with Jack Horner in the first place?
Yeah. I saw some of his earliest publications were coming out as I was an undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
and caught my attention. So this is like 1983. I graduated college in 84, so a long time ago. Um, and so I like the idea of fossil, like looking at dinosaur behavior. So that was exciting to me. Um, I couldn't find where he was, though. I had trouble finding where he was when I applied to grad school,
Uh-huh.
because he was at Princeton working
Right, in New
there, and
Jersey.
then he
Yeah.
then he had just started at the Museum of the Rockies
Mm-hmm.
in '82. So I'm looking around in '83, and there's not like websites and stuff to go to.
Right. Yeah.
So I applied to UM and Montana State. Um, but it was kind of late in the process. And by that time, I'd already applied elsewhere and I got accepted elsewhere. And I was like, okay, I went for my master's at the University of Georgia, but I had this picture of Montana. I was like, oh, that's where I'm going next to do dinosaurs.
Nice.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one of the most interesting dinosaurs from Montana, I'm sure you would agree, is Troodon. How did you first get involved with Troodon?
I my I guess I would say mostly what I do in paleontology is more nice cup is taphonomy.
Thanks. It's a long story.
So I like to interpret sites. So that was kind of what I wanted to do as a grad student, is like
Mm-hmm.
do that kind of taphonomic interpretation of how did this fossil assemblage come to be? What
Right.
biological and geological factors produced it? And
Mm-hmm.
so Jack gave me this project, Jack's birthday site, which he had found
Right.
on his birthday in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started here January of 1989. Um, and so started, excavating that the next summer. And initially, Jack wanted me to work on hadrosaurs. Um, but then during the excavation, we started uncovering like one part of the quarry just had a lot of curious bones that largely were Troodon.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of my first initiation, was like, okay, who are these bones? And yeah,
Right.
so that was
So
kind of
that's in the Two
the
Medicine
first
formation, right? So the duckbill would have been
two mass
Myosaurum.
information. Yes. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The
So that's
site's
up
really
near.
cool. It had three different types of hadrosaurs. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's up near Shoto, Montana. If anybody in the chat is wondering where that is, so like the northwest corner of the state. Uh, yeah, yeah. What was it like working at Egg Mountain during like the heyday there? Because there must have been a lot of media around. I'm sure if we were to look at an old documentary, because there were a lot of them from that time, we'd probably see a young Dave Varricchio there, right?
I don't know about that. They started working at Egg Mountain proper in 78, 79, and
Right.
worked there
Yeah.
to about 83. And then the
Oh,
Museum of the
okay.
Rockies established the field school,
Mm-hmm.
and that opened in 88,
Right. I
and
think
ran
that's what I'm
until
thinking of.
2000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did work there some summers.
Mm-hmm.
Some summers I kind of hung out there for a little bit because I was up and doing my own field work, but it was a good place to stop and get a good meal and visit with folks. And then sometimes you'd sort of rotate in when they needed extra help. So I did
Right.
work there in 93 and 94, not 93, 94, and
What you're
95.
doing?
Mm-hmm.
But so my second introduction to Troodon was during a really wet season. This is 1993, and we weren't working the birthday site anymore, but we were prospecting around there, and I found parts of an adult Troodon associated with these eggs. And at the time, the eggs were called Ordromius eggs. So that was just like, what?
Uh-huh.
Um, and that was the year that the American Museum published on the oviraptor eggs,
Mm-hmm. In
that,
Mongolia, yeah.
really published on the Protoceratops eggs as not Protoceratops, but oviraptor. So they had embryos
Right.
inside and said, oh, these are actually oviraptor eggs. So that
Mm-hmm.
was the same year that we found this adult on top of Orodromius eggs. And it was like, what do we have going on here? Right. So, I mean, ultimately they proved to be Troodon eggs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an idea for a while that Troodon may have been a brood parasite and laid its eggs in Orodromius nests? Is that where that misperception came from, you think?
I don't know about that. But
Oh, okay.
Jack had, when they excavated Egg Mountain, they had found, lots of these eggs that they
Mm-hmm.
initially called Orodromius skeletons of various sizes. But they
Mm-hmm.
did find some Troodon teeth, and they found a really nice small juvenile Troodon. And and Jack, at the time there wasn't much known about Troodon. So it was sort of
Mm-hmm.
an enigmatic animal. It was kind of teeth and it was kind of maybe a theropod, but there really wasn't a whole lot to do with it. Um, and Jack, in just like a news bulletin, was like, "Could Troodon be a hypsilophodont?" So like there was like this
Uh-huh.
weird intertwining of Orodromius and Troodon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you've seen Orodromius bones, they're hollow like a theropod, and
Sure.
the ends of the toe bones have these nice articulations like a
Mm-hmm.
theropod. And
Right.
so it's easy to kind of like kind of misidentify them or think one is the other because there are some anatomical similarities between the two,
Gotcha.
if you're just looking at,
Yeah.
individual elements and stuff. Yeah.
And so, for those of you in the chat wondering what Orodromius is, if you're not familiar with that name, it's a little beaky, two-legged, plant-eating dinosaur. What we used to call a hypsilophodont, and now we would call it an orodromine, I guess. There's a whole family named after that. But yeah, yeah. Getting back to Troodon, I know you've done a lot of work on that particular genus, Dave. What makes Troodon special? Why is it important scientifically as a dinosaur?
Scientifically. Um, I think the Troodontidae is a really interesting group. So the group of Troodon and its family members.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for a while, we thought of, John Ostrom published on Deinonychus, and Dromaeosaurids were thought to be the sister taxon to birds.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, oh no, it's Dromaeosaurids plus troodontids were the sister
Right.
taxon to birds. So
Mm-hmm.
troodontids in there. But now some people are suggesting that maybe it's troodontids are the group closest to birds.
I have heard that a lot.
Um,
Yeah.
and that maybe birds are actually troodontids, right?
Right.
Like if you thought in
Uh-huh.
a cladistic sense, that one ancestry, there was a common ancestor of troodontids and birds, and they're
Mm-hmm.
nested within them. So I think from that perspective, troodontids are really interesting. And then Troodon is really our best represented troodontid in North America. We really don't have
Hmm.
much in the way of
Right.
troodontid material in North America. We have, a number of animals, species from Asia that have beautiful skeletons, some with feathers.
Mm-hmm.
But we've always had kind of this scattering of elements in North America. And I feel like Troodon is the one that we can say, oh, we have a lot of material. So it's in some ways our bridge to those kind of questions in North
Mm-hmm.
America. The
Um,
other aspect I would say is that we have a lot of material from eggs to adults sitting on top of eggs. So that's like a
mm-hmm.
whole lifespan there, and embryos. So that's kind of cool and rare for any dinosaur.
Yeah.
Um, so that
To
kind
have
of
that
makes
kind
it
of
special as
ontogenetic
well.
information, certainly. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
what makes Troodon special in terms of the history of its discovery? I mean, I know it's one of the earliest dinosaurs found in North America. It gets
Yeah.
really confusing for a while. Do you want to dive into that for a second?
It is kind of messy, yeah. So it's Ferdinand Hayden travels out west as a young, kind of just like a young, just got out of his graduate, his college degree, and was like, I want to travel west and explore and be a naturalist. And they're like, okay, we'll send you up on this boat up the Missouri River.
And this is in what,
Um,
the 1850s at the time, so before the
18,
Civil
yeah,
War.
yeah, he leaves
Yeah.
in 1850. Yeah,
Hmm.
1853, and Montana isn't even a named area. It's just part of an unorganized territory when he leaves.
Right.
Um, I think as he's traveling, it becomes the Nebraska territory. But this is like think
Hmm.
how early it is. So I mean, there's Native Americans here, but there's few, Western settlements. So Fort Benton is like the biggest with about 100 people.
Right.
Um, so he prospects around there. He has some American Indian helpers at times. It's fairly dangerous, though. They actually get attacked. He has two of his helpers get killed in an attack. But he
Shoot. Yeah.
collects a number of fossils and then sends them back east to the Smithsonian. And one of
Hmm.
those ends up with Joseph Leidy in Philadelphia. He names a variety of animals based on teeth, and one of them is Troodon formosus. So Troodon formosus begins as a single tooth found sometime in
Got a picture here. Yeah.
1854, 55 in Montana. And then, yeah.
Here's the original illustration
Oh,
of
that's cool.
Troodon formosus right there. If
Wow.
anybody's wondering what we're talking about. So it is a single tooth. And how big is this, Dave? It's pretty small, right?
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, yeah, not a half an inch at tops, not really that, probably like two-thirds of a half, whatever that is.
And he names it Troodon formosus. He thinks it's a lizard originally, right? Almost like a monitor lizard or something like that. Was that his reasoning?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the name means beautiful wounding tooth, which is kind of a cool
Hmm.
name, I think. Troodon formosus. Yeah, it gets kicked around. I think Cope is the first to say that it's probably a dinosaur,
Mm,
maybe 10 or 15 years later. Then they name a beautiful Pachycephalosaur skull, Troodon validus, the true
right.
Troodon. Um,
Ironic.
so yeah,
That
Troodons
later
to me
becomes
are,
Stegosaurus, I
are
believe.
what's
Yeah.
that?
That later becomes
Yeah,
Stegosaurus, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Not Stegosaurus,
Uh,
but Stegosaurus. Don't want to confuse anybody in
Stegosaurus.
the chat. It, like I said, this all gets really complicated, but
Yeah, and then
yeah.
even like Nopshka thinks that they're armored dinosaurs for a
Uh-huh.
while. I don't know. And then slowly it gets settled out around the 1930s and the 40s that it's a theropod, you
Hmm.
know. And then Phil Curry is the one that kind of, I would say 1985 sort of establishes it as a real animal, um, synonymizes it with Stenonychosaurus,
Hmm.
and says, okay, here's this theropod. Now we know it's a troodontid, and
Hmm.
so that's 1985 kind of establishes it as a I'm going to say tentatively establishes it as a good species of
Uh-huh.
carnivorous dinosaur. Yeah.
Right. So at the beginning, all we had was a single tooth, and that's what led to all this confusion. What kind of material do we have of Troodon nowadays? How many specimens do we have? How complete are they?
Yeah. Well, we have a really good, so from the birthday site, Jack's birthday site, we have a really nice collection of material
Hmm.
that includes most of the skeleton from, head to through the tail. Um, it represents several individuals, but none of them are, it was this scattering of bones. So we have
Hmm.
bits and pieces of individuals and not, it's hard to pick up one vertebrae and say, does that go to this leg bone?
Right.
So it's a little bit messy. But elsewhere in the two medicine, we have the back end of an adult. That's the one I found on top of the eggs.
Hmm.
So that has a nice complete leg and some of the tail elements. There's a large juvenile that Jack found that has much of the skeleton, weird taphonomy. So a lot of the ends are missing on lots of bones.
Huh.
But again, you can kind of use that to unite birthday site elements and say, okay,
Right.
this leg is about the right size to go this neck vertebrae. And then there's
Hmm.
this small juvenile from the top of Egg Mountain. And then Jack also found a clutch of eggs with embryos inside.
Hmm.
So we have, so we, you know, so that's the Montana material.
Hmm.
There is some new stuff being found by Denver Fowler out in the Jute River. Um, there are some things from Canada. There's a specimen that was called Stenonychosaurus for a while.
Hmm.
That has a fair amount of material from much of the skeleton. Doesn't have any skull parts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then
So
that's about it.
yeah, but
But,
that's pretty decent. I mean, you hear people talk about Troodon being a dubious genus. It's based on a single tooth, but we'll get into the taxonomic status later and everything. But we do
Okay,
have a fair amount of material of this critter, whatever you want to call it. Um,
correct. That's what I would say. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, nice. Is there more stuff coming out of Egg Mountain at this point, or is work there kind of halted for the time being?
We're not working there now,
Mm-hmm.
um, but we dug. It doesn't produce that much material
Gotcha.
of Troodon. It has
Ontogeny.
eggs, so
Mm-hmm.
it's produced a number of eggs. We worked there from uh, intensively from 2010 to 2016, so 7 summers.
Uh-huh.
And got, I guess we pulled out, 3 or 4 partial egg clutches
Nice.
and isolated teeth, but nothing skeletal. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Gotcha. Uh, what can we tell about the ontogeny of this animal since we've got a pretty decent growth series, it sounds like? Were there any
Yeah,
surprises in the way that they grew or anything like that?
I'd say we're still kind of working on that.
Huh.
Um, and some of it is complicated by the fact that we don't have uh, individuals all the way through.
Right.
But I don't know if you know, but there are some things, their feet are big, their lower legs are long and big as
Mm-hmm.
juveniles. Their legs are kind of long, they're kind of gangly legged, um, and get more, their body sort of fills out, their proportions kind of fill out as they get larger. So their linear dimensions kind of grow first, and then they kind of
Right.
put on mass as they reach larger
A
sizes
lot
is
like we
how,
see in tyrannosaurs. They kind of do
yeah,
the same thing. Yeah, where they start very, very leggy and then they really bulk up at a certain
yeah.
stage.
So
Interesting.
that on a smaller scale, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Obviously
Yeah.
not really bulking up.
Very cool. The nests that we have from Troodon, I know this is one of your specialties. This is something you published on numerous times. What information can we glean from those nests, and can we broaden that out at all to draw inferences about dinosaur reproduction and nesting behavior and stuff like that?
So we have a fair number of clutches, egg clutches.
Uh-huh.
These the initial discoveries were back in 79 and 80 and early 80s from Egg Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And we found them elsewhere too. Uh, so there's egg clutches, and then one of the other reasons I got kind of pulled into Troodon and dinosaur reproduction was that I think it was 94. I was working in Egg Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
and on the top of it we had found a patch of bumpy shelled eggs. At the time, we thought these were maybe Troodon eggs.
Hmm.
Um, and we were working around that and then found this other set of eggs, which were the Orodromius eggs, which are the eggs that actually are Troodon. Um, so that was kind of happening as after I had found that adult on top of Orodromius
Mm-hmm.
eggs. And so I was kind of like, that kind of just pulled me into the whole Troodon and Troodon reproduction.
Gotcha.
Um, so I guess I would say there's three kind of interesting things about Troodon egg clutches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first is that it has elongate eggs. You kind of think almost like a pop can, but you sort of narrowed one end so it kind of comes to a pointy end like a chicken egg.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those eggs are planted in the ground, more or less upright, kind of leaning in. So that's kind of a weird feature.
Right.
Um, the second is that those eggs occur in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the size of egg clutches can be relatively large. So you can get 22 eggs or even 24 eggs in an egg clutch.
Which is
And
unusual
that's,
because as large eggs, 24 of them per individual, that seems like too many eggs for one female Troodon. What might that imply, you think?
yeah, so yeah, they are relatively big eggs. And Jack suggested early on that even if he was thinking Orodromius, but it works for Troodon, that maybe they were communal nests, multiple females
Mm-hmm.
contributing to them. And if you
Right.
look at the numbers, like the ratio of the weight of all those eggs versus the adult egg,
Mm-hmm.
adult mass, um, and whether you use a reptile model or bird model, you get an egg clutch that's way too big. That's about 3 times bigger than you'd expect for an adult,
Right.
whether you think of them as a bird or think of them as a reptile. So something's going on there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then the egg pairing, we think that reflects this iterative laying of two eggs at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
there's monoautochronic ovulation is the term for it. Geckos do it. So there are some examples of animals that do it today. So they have two ovaries, sort
Uh-huh.
of standard issue in a vertebrate, and two
Yeah.
oviducts, and they form one egg from each ovary, and then the gecko will lay those two eggs, and
Mm-hmm.
then they kind of then go on elsewhere. It takes them about 3 to 5 days to lay the next pair, and
Sure.
they'll lay another pair somewhere else. Um, so we thought that model worked for Troodon in that that's how birds produce eggs one at a time from their ovary and oviduct.
Right.
And so we're sort of hypothesizing that Troodon's ovaries and oviducts function the same way, like a bird's, but it had two, so it
But
was
it had
doing this
two, yeah.
monoautochronic ovulation. Yeah,
Uh-huh. So the idea
and
maybe is that like a male troodon would dig out a nest and then be visited by various females who would breed with him and then lay two eggs at a time in the nest until you've got how many did you say? 20 or 30?
up to 24 is our biggest one. Yeah,
Up to 24. Wow. And how
yeah.
about how big are these eggs? Somebody in the chat was asking.
Like this. I sorry, I had a model on my desk, but yeah, if you take a pop can, but then you like
Uh-huh.
truncate and narrow the bottom end and make the top end sort of round it, and that's kind of
Okay.
it's I
Gotcha.
think there's 300 cubic centimeters. Is that right?
Okay, okay. I was gonna say potato size, but potatoes can vary a lot in size.
Yeah, I think
But
if you were
yeah.
thinking, yeah, I think potato. If you were thinking of like a baked potato size, like a
Okay,
big,
yeah.
then you're good. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Nice, nice.
yeah.
Uh
I had never used that. That's a good model, a
that one's
baked
free,
potato.
Dave. Yeah. Use that whenever you want. um Speaking of eggs, I remember when I was taking classes from you and just having discussions at DLS and stuff too. Um you would talk about why eggs are really special as fossils. They kind of straddle this interesting line. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think egg clutches are kind of really cool
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that in that they're both a trace fossil, so a product of a dinosaur behavior, but they're
Mm-hmm.
also they're also a body fossil, right? So they're a body fossil in that egg is the home for the developing embryo. It's produced by the adult, so it reflects the chemistry and physiology of the adult. And then it
Mm-hmm.
has to function, right? The developing embryo has to live in there, has to breathe through the membranes and the pores in the eggshell. So it has anatomical purpose. You can think about like, and then pressures if an animal's going to sit on it, stuff. So it has structure.
Sure.
But then as a clutch, that's like the adult is arranging those in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a meaningful value to how they're arranged.
Right.
Maybe we don't understand it, but at least there's a purposeful, arrangement of those eggs. And so I think that's really cool to think, to wrestle with. So why is it doing that? What is the purpose? What is the function of this arrangement?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can also think about like how it did it. Like, is it grabbing the eggs with its hands or its mouth? Is it
Right.
just squatting down and locating its cloaca in the right direction? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think that's
Because
really cool that
these
way.
eggs are partially buried too. It's not like they're just kind of laid on some straw or something. They're
Yeah.
basically half submerged in the substrate, right?
Yeah. So I
Um,
mean, you can think about that. I know it's like, did they have to prepare the soil first to loosen it up, and then
right.
then they can push it in loose soil, or do they make a mound of soil and then lean it on there and then add more
Mm-hmm.
soil? So it's interesting to think about like what's going on there in that construction process.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Yeah.
suspect that they would have put dried vegetation over the eggs? I know we can sometimes test things like that, looking at the density of the pores in the eggs.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we
what have we
did
got
look at
there?
that. Yeah. So those animals that have exposed eggs
Mm-hmm.
sitting in a nest, an open nest. We think of birds that way, right? But there are some lizards, again, going back to the geckos that
Mm-hmm.
lay the pair. They kind of just tuck them under some leaves or in a crack and bark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those animals usually have low porosity because they're concerned about loss of water, the egg,
Right.
drying out.
Uh-huh.
And not too concerned about getting oxygen in because they're open and exposed. And then
Sure.
anything
Yeah.
that buries their eggs, whether it's vegetation or sediment, those eggs have high porosity.
Hmm.
Um,
Because you don't have
and
to worry
so
about them
that's kind of
drying
the
out. Yeah.
dichotomy. What's that?
They have high porosity because you don't have to worry about them drying out because they're buried, but they still need to transfer a lot of gases in between. So you've got to have a lot of pores. Yeah.
Yep.
So what do
Yeah.
we have for Troodon then?
So Troodon is like way on as far as dinosaurs go, non-avian
Uh,
dinosaurs. It's like the most avian of all dinosaurs. It basically has porosity like a bird. Um,
okay.
so
So
so that kind of argues that some of it's exposed, and then if it's planted in the ground,
mhm.
it's got to be at least partially exposed for it to really function. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that implies that Troodon may have brooded its eggs, actually sat on the nest to keep them warm or keep
Yeah,
the
I
sun
mean, I
off?
think I think there's three arguments for the brooding.
Uh-huh.
One is the porosity. The second is like how those eggs are arranged. And so we have one really nice nest structure.
Mm-hmm.
So not just the clutch, but then this sediment structure around it that
Mm-hmm.
suggests kind of a nest thing. And we tested there like for vegetation evidence, and actually there's more evidence of vegetation in the sediment below where the eggs were than above.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that structure, that nesting trace argues for brooding. And then we had this adult found on top of them. But the adult on top of them wasn't very nice. It wasn't perched there like a beautiful oviraptor.
Not like Big
It
Mama
was,
over after, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was just kind of like laying there, and it had bite marks in it. It had kind of been abused by taphonomic processes after it had perished. So, yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Speaking of Big Mama Overraptor, like I just brought up, I know you've argued that it should maybe be Big Papa Overraptor, that it may have been dinosaur males who actually brooded the nests. What's your reasoning there, and how might we test that hypothesis?
Yeah. There's a big ante too.
Yeah, yeah, it was found
Yeah.
after, was it the next year that AMNH found that? I forget.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I think it's a good starting point to think about those names
Uh-huh.
in that we're mammals and we think moms take care of their young because all mammals do. All
Yeah.
mammals nurse their young. So we are directly tied to mom.
Mm-hmm.
And mammals are either maternal care or biparental care, or maybe there's some
Right.
group cooperative system. So, anyways, I kind of feel like that's a good starting point because I think that's sort of a bias in our head that if you see a clutch of eggs and you see an adult on top of them, our first gut reaction, they were just naming it nicknames. I know there's no science to that, but the gut reaction is to call it Big Mama. And we kind of like go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But if you really step back and look at vertebrates in a bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of male care in fish have lots of male care,
Oh
paternal
yeah.
care. Um, and if you think about like where dinosaurs fall, uh, birds have biparental care. There's one group, rat tights have a lot of paternal care, male care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lizards may have no care. Crocodilians mostly have maternal care. So they're kind of in this spot where those four different strategies are
Mm-hmm.
about equally likely, right? There's no favoring maternal care versus paternal care versus biparental care versus no care. If you had to
Yeah.
just guess from their phylogenetic position, it could be any of those. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the starting point. And you have to kind of like get rid of our mom bias as mammals.
Uh-huh.
So I mean the first thing that we looked at was the clutch size versus adults. And with precocial young that hatch out, the best model is a male system like you're talking about before, where
Mm-hmm.
there's one male and multiple females contribute to this large clutch.
Right.
It's it's hard to test beyond that, but some people have been making some inroads there. So there's at least the prediction of if multiple females contribute to this clutch,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the eggs have different signatures. So Tu Rui
Oh,
Yang
interesting.
in Taiwan has argued that there's chemical differences, like the chemistry between eggs in a pair they're more similar to the next pair.
Huh.
And then is it Josh? Uh, he just finished his PhD at North Carolina State. Um,
Oh shoot,
oh,
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
it begins with a H, I'm pretty sure his last name. But he looked at the, he had a really cool study, he just had it, gave a talk at SVP on it,
Mm-hmm.
um, looking at the, so again, going to oviraptors, looking at the egg texture, and
Mm-hmm.
he was able to quantify egg texture in a really cool way.
Huh.
And so again, the egg texture of two eggs in a pair is
Mm-hmm.
more similar than to the next pair. So I think there's some good evidence there now that we do have these communal nests laid by multiple females.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it's a question of like, well, does that system work with could still be a biparental system like ostriches have that. Um, yeah, tough to say. I guess we'd have to find more, convincing evidence that these oviraptors that we find on top of them are male versus female. And
Mm-hmm.
that's always been a challenging question to sort out, um,
Right.
to the gender of a dinosaur skeleton. We haven't really done that yet. People have
Uh-huh.
argued this way and that way, but I don't feel like we have a good handle on that yet. Yeah.
Right. I know the only thing that seems at all convincing for figuring out sexual dimorphism in dinosaurs is like looking at medullary bone. Um, so for everybody in the chat who's maybe not familiar with this, female birds when they're about to lay eggs, they'll start to put down a layer of bone in the medullary cavity. Basically, like it's almost like where the bone marrow might be, and the interior of the long bones, and then apparently they kind of draw from that. They take calcium out of that reserve in order to form the eggshell. Stop me if I'm getting any of this drastically wrong, Dave. Um, but there's an idea that maybe dinosaurs were doing this too, um, and that we might be able to find medullary bone in dinosaurs, famously in the B Rex Tyrannosaurus specimen. It's been claimed that we have it there, but I've heard some people are kind of skeptical of that idea. Do you have an opinion on that, Dave? Is that
I'm one of those skeptical people. Yeah.
yeah?
Um, but I think you can put that aside, the B Rex
Okay.
aside. There's an oviraptor from southern China that we at that had one egg inside, kind of just
Mm-hmm.
in its pelvic canal, and one
Oh,
egg just external to it. Um,
I never
like it
heard
had
about this.
died. What's that?
Yeah. So it was gravid potentially. Like
It was gravid. Yeah. I think probably those eggs, when it died, it was forcing those eggs out as it bloated.
kind of like with
But
those ichthyosaurs that are giving birth. Same thing where it probably happened after death that the embryo actually comes out. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. But we looked at the histology there,
Mm-hmm.
and we have looked at the histology of adults on top of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And in none of those have we found medullary bone.
Huh.
So the gravid female didn't have medullary bone. So that sort of makes the argument that oviraptors probably didn't have medullary bone. So when you
Interesting.
turn to the adult on top of the eggs, it doesn't have medullary bone, but that's just doesn't say much. It sort of is not
Right.
it sort of fails to falsify that it's female, but it's could be
Right.
male, could be female. Yeah.
Do crocodilians have medullary bone today? If we're using the EPB, is that
Yeah, they have denser bones. They don't really have a
right?
good marrow cavity.
Uh huh.
And so they do have erosion rooms. They
Right.
see that where they're drawing, they have this thicker wall to the bones,
Uh
and
huh.
they do sort of corrode out interiors in the egg laying process. So they sort of
Huh.
have erosional spaces. So there might be a way
Uh huh.
eventually, maybe when we understand histology better, maybe we can pick out the subtleties that we don't see so far,
Right.
that we're not recognizing so far, is what I mean.
So could it be that medullary bone is like a weird special adaptation that birds have for flight? Since just about everything about birds today is optimized for flight. They went through this evolutionary bottleneck. They were, even flightless birds evolved from flighted ancestors. So like, birds are just weird, and that's one adaptation that they have for reducing weight in their bodies since they've got really thin bones. Could it be just a special weird bird thing that we shouldn't expect to see in dinosaurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say yes.
Okay,
I mean, our
yeah,
bones are really thin. They
uh
really
huh,
just don't have room to, since they're so thin-walled, you
yeah,
really can't remove the bone tissue to make eggs from those walls because they're too thin already,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Whereas the croc, alligator bone is this thick-walled thing with very little hollow space to it, so you can
Right.
remove stuff out of there without consequences. So I think the medullary bone does make sense in birds and flight.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean the walls of the bones in a troodon or a oviraptor, they're more avian than alligator-like.
Sure.
But they still have some thickness to them. They're still not quite as far as an
Yeah.
ostrich, even some of these bigger animals. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, cool.
Isotopes, maybe there's isotope. Yeah, I feel like we have to really sort out dimorphism first
Right.
and say, okay, how do we identify? Can we pick out um, a female troodon from
Mm-hmm.
a male troodon from an adult skeleton? And that's been challenging.
Right. I mean, it seems really
Harris,
challenging for dinosaurs in general. Like,
yeah,
should we even expect them to be sexually dimorphic in their skeletons? Because most modern birds don't seem to be, with a few rare exceptions, like maybe the
yeah.
spurs on male turkeys or something. But apart from that, even like I think people like Kevin Surya were looking at the width of the pelvic aperture in a bunch of different birds, and it's like there doesn't seem to be a difference between males and females there with representative samples. So I don't know. Yeah,
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 it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Harris, you remember Harris Bokenheide from I don't know, maybe he didn't overlap with you, but he was a grad
yeah. I don't
student
think
of mine,
so.
just finished a couple years ago. And
Nice.
he looked at bone histology in Troodon.
Uh huh.
Um, and he kind of found two trajectories in
Mm-hmm.
bone growth. And again, it's a small sample size. We're talking like 5 or 6 individuals,
Yeah.
but two individuals had relatively accelerated growth,
Uh huh.
and the other four were kind of a slower. So they kind of were like on different paths.
Huh.
Um, and you do see that in alligators where the dimorphism is really just a size-based thing. Males are just bigger than females and have a
Right.
different growth trajectory
Uh huh.
I'm sort of graphing size versus age here is what I'm doing here. I don't know.
Uh
And
huh.
so Troodon falls into that. It doesn't mean that the big ones are necessarily male.
Mm-hmm.
Those could be the females, but there is some
Sure.
suggestion um, of diverging growth patterns. And there are a few elements, and again, we don't have lots of elements that I kind of wondered about that earlier too. That we have in the collection of humerus upper arm bones for Troodon from the birthday site.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are some that are the same size. There's two that are the same size, but one has this really juvenile look to it,
Uh huh.
whereas the other one has this very adult form. All the articulations are really well formed and the bone is really dense. And
Hmm.
the other one, same size, doesn't lacks that. But
Uh huh.
that morphology occurs in smaller individuals. And so I think that one is actually on its path to being big, that's growing fast and it hasn't matured yet. And so it's going to be this one sort of maxed out or near maxing out, the one that all the fine articulations, and this other one is still hasn't gotten there. So for
Gotcha.
me, that suggests at least that there's individuals of different sizes.
Uh huh.
But it kind of opens the
Ontogeny.
doors like, oh, could that be a male versus female or female male and a size variation? Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about that before, but yeah, and that maybe that goes to explain kind of these weird vicariances that we see in like in dinosaur histology. Like you might have two different individuals from the same bone bed, and they've got it seems like different growth trajectories, even though we assume they're the same taxon.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Huh. That's pretty cool, Dave. That's pretty cool.
There's a student at University of Alberta, I think, that's been looking at metatarsals
Uh
from
huh.
troodontid from Alberta.
Uh huh.
And she also has found two different trajectories as well. So that's kind
Gotcha.
of cool. Harris didn't look at, he was looking at tibia and femurs,
Uh
and she
huh.
was looking at metatarsals, but they both kind of found similar patterns in their assemblages. And then it's kind of nice just to have independent, people not working together to
Right.
find similar patterns. So I feel like there's probably is a general pattern out there, um, which might argue that maybe there's a size difference between males and females in Troodon.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Well, so thinking about that, trying to like take that out a little bit further, Um, I know in some groups of birds, especially like birds of prey, the females tend to be larger, and then in most species, I think the males tend to be larger. What's it like for ratites and tinamous? I know like in ratites and tinamous, the male broods the eggs. All the females come and lay their eggs in his nest.
Yeah.
Uh, are the males or the females larger in ratites or tinamous? Does it vary by species?
I think it generally tends to be males bigger, as
Huh.
is my thinking.
I think that's the case for ostriches at least, but I'm trying to remember for
Ostriches are for
tinamous.
sure. Yeah, I think emus and rheas and cassowaries.
Uh huh.
That's my guess. I could be wrong. I'd like to check on that, but that's my thing.
Uh
That's
huh.
that's what I think. Or there's not a whole lot of difference, or that they're kind of comparable in size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Uh. Uh.
The the one adult we have with the eggs, I would
Uh huh.
say uh, is a smaller adult. So that could argue that
Interesting.
if it's a male, then that maybe females potentially could be bigger. I don't know.
Uh huh. Do you have histo on that specimen? Do we know if it was full grown or not?
Yeah, it was a pretty mature individual. Yeah, it
We
was
got
like
EFS on it.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, for everybody in the chat wondering what we're talking about. So EFS is an external fundamental signature or external fundamental system. I've heard it both
System.
ways.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's like where the growth lines in the bone start to get so close together, it like shows a slowing of the growth rate as the animal's reaching its adult size. This is how we tell how old a dinosaur was at time of death, how mature it was. You count the growth rings after you cut open the bones, kind of like dendrochronology, kind of like looking at tree rings to figure out how old a tree was before it got cut down.
I
Yeah,
think this doesn't have an EFS, but it does have close spacing of the growth lines at the periphery, and
gotcha.
and finding sort of losing their vascularity. So it's
Yeah,
it's almost there. It's almost there to growth is not done all. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Before I start asking you about the quagmire that is troodontid taxonomy, I want to
Yeah.
ask how much time you've got. How are you doing right
I'm
now, time
good.
wise?
Yeah, I got time. Yeah.
Okay, cool,
Always time to talk about Troodon. Yeah.
awesome.
I was
Really
just thinking
appreciate
about
this, man.
another feature about ontogeny that's interesting
Yeah.
is that we've had some students looking at Heath Caldwell and Emilio Bendel have been looking at uh, emu skeletons and how they fuse when
Mm-hmm.
things fuse up in emu skeletons. And one thing cool about Troodon is that the sutures between the body of the centrum invertebrate and the arches
Uh huh.
occur really early so
Huh.
that they will be half grown
Uh
and that
huh.
will be completely fused. And then
Right.
that fused vertebrae will continue to grow much bigger.
Sure.
And that's a pattern that you don't see in something like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Hadrosaur, where
Interesting.
usually those two parts of the vertebrae fuse really late.
Uh huh.
But they found that pattern in emus. So emus hatch out, and
Uh huh.
those things fuse up relatively like half growth, and then they continue to kind of expand on the complete vertebrae after that. So that's kind of a neat pattern. I don't know if it means anything.
Uh huh.
Or, and then the sacrum, right, where the pelvis attaches, those vertebrae
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing. The arches attach to the centrums,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't fuse together until it's a late, basically, to it's an adult. And we also
Interesting.
we
Okay.
also see that in Troodon as well.
Uh huh.
Yeah. So it's just
Well,
kind of weird patterns of fusion people use
yeah.
to identify adults versus juveniles, where Troodon kind of matches that in birds.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of neat.
Very interesting. I guess that's further reason to be a little bit leery about using skeletal fusion as an indicator of maturity. I've had the idea drilled into my head that like never trust skeletal fusion; it'll steer you wrong. I was having a conversation with Kevin Padian about this a few months ago, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know why people do that. Look at crocodilians; they'll fuse and unfuse parts of their skull seemingly at random for no reason." And
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think the post-Cranian crocodiles has a predictive value.
Okay. Huh.
Um, I mean, I guess I would say it takes some nuance, is I
Sure.
would say, to
Yeah.
understand how fusion works.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you could look at these juvenile troodontids and consider them adults based upon that fusion.
Uh-huh.
Um, but now, if you like say, oh, but we've been looking at the wrong model. If you look at the emu, you go, oh, but the sacrum hasn't fused,
Uh-huh.
and then you say, oh, like the adult sitting on top of the eggs,
Uh-huh.
its sacrum is fully fused. And we've done histology to say, yeah, it's an old individual. So I feel like, oh yeah, you can confidently say if the sacrum and troodon is fused, it's mature. That's like the last thing that happened for those vertebrae to come together. Uh,
Gotcha. Okay.
so yeah, I
Huh.
think I would just need to have a better understanding of the modern variability in fusion, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe we can apply that better in the fossil record.
That makes a lot of sense.
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Uh, so you were mentioning some students up in Canada doing some work on troodontids. So let's just dive into all the confusion and turmoil in troodontid taxonomy. Can you walk us through Troodon versus Stenonychosaurus versus uh, Latinovenatrix, and you hear a lot of people nowadays saying that, like, oh, Troodon, it's a wastebasket taxon, like we shouldn't be using that
Yeah,
name anymore. What's your view on this as somebody who works extensively on troodontids and has dug up a lot of Troodon in the field?
yeah. Well, I guess I would say Troodon, it is a problem.
Uh-huh.
So as we said before, it was named on that single tooth.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
type specimen, I'm impressed that you have a framed image of
I
that.
I change out the background every day for our streams, Dave. This is
Yeah.
every single day different stuff. I want to keep things as interesting as I can.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah.
like that. Um, so we have that single tooth, and it went through all this chaos, and people calling
Yeah.
it a lizard or a pachycephalosaur or an armored dinosaur,
Uh-huh.
hypsilophodont. Yeah, so it's messy, and that's ultimately like if you're trying to identify things, you have to go back to that single tooth and how
The holotype, yeah.
diagnostic is it, right?
Mhm.
Um, Stenonychosaurus was named in 1932 on largely a foot.
Mhm.
So that's the type specimen for Stenonychosaurus is a foot. It has the metatarsals, it has toe bones. There's a couple other partial elements to the hand and things like that.
Mhm.
That's the type specimen for Stenonychosaurus.
Huh. So I think you said that, was it Curry who synonymized Deinonychosaurus and Troodon at one point?
Yeah, so he had found jaw bones. So there
Mhm.
was another animal named also in 1932, Polyodontosaurus grandis.
Right.
So Polyodontosaurus is like the many-toothed reptile, a many-toothed
Uh-huh.
dinosaur, but it didn't have any teeth. It was a dentary.
Oh boy, yeah. Okay.
So it was a
Yeah.
dentary with lots of sockets.
Uh-huh.
And then they had been collecting material, a lot of this from the Dinosaur Provincial Park,
Mhm.
scattering the material. Um, and so Phil Curry had some jaw elements that had teeth. He thought the tooth matched that of Troodon. He thought some of
Mhm.
this stuff went to frontals, that went to some Stenonychosaurus related specimens, and thought, oh, that's all kind of one animal, and we can synonymize it based on the tooth.
Right.
Um, People have been finding teeth. I guess the problem with troodontids is that they have a lot of variability through their dentition. So the
Yeah.
tooth changes from front to back drastically. The
Mhm.
anterior dentary teeth are very different from the middle dentary teeth. Premaxillary teeth are different from the maxillary teeth. So there's a complications there that any one tooth, it's just kind of hard to tell where it goes in the jaw.
Mhm.
And the kind of the grab basket aspect was, people find teeth in Alaska or Texas or Mexico, and they have
Mhm.
those big serrations, and they're troodontid teeth for sure. But since in North America we only had this one named animal, they just kind of called it all troodon. And some people were like, "Oh, is that?" It rubbed people the wrong way to think of an animal ranging that far geographically,
Uh-huh.
and then and sometimes temporally as well.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, we didn't really have another name, so it's like either you call it Troodon or you call it Troodontid, which is fine. Sort of a
Yeah.
matter of choice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Huh.
Um,
Do you think that the
I think
genus
we.
name Troodon is worth keeping? Would you fight to keep that in common usage?
Yes, we are fighting to keep it in common usage. So we
All
have a
right.
paper in press where we're saying, oh, here's this two medicine stuff. We'll just call this
Uh-huh.
Troodon. Here's a sampling of it. And then we also have the petition to the ICZN. So we
Yeah.
submitted that in December.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I got caught.
It's
So
okay.
that's
Do you
been
want
there
to
for a
explain to
month.
the viewers what the ICZN is for anybody who might not be familiar with
Okay. So the
yeah.
ICZN is the International Committee on Zoological Nomenclature. So it's like the ruling body of names, of scientific animal names.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. And so they kind of keep track, at least nowadays, of new names. Um, and they're sort of like the judge of like the ultimate judge on names. So you can petition them and say, I don't like this name, or, for the most part, scientists are supposed to kind of work things out for themselves,
Kind of works
but
by a
they're there
general
kind of to like,
consensus loosely, yeah.
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 Yeah, they kind of, but the ICCN sets up the rules, says you have to follow these rules. If
Hmm.
people don't like the rules or don't follow the rules, then maybe that name falls out of usage or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so we petitioned them. So there's the type specimen for Troodon formosus. It's a single tooth. We're saying, oh, that's bad and problematic.
Hmm.
Um, People
So
said,
you're
oh, well, let's use Stenocosaurus. And we're
uh-huh.
like, if you don't like the tooth, there's no reason to like the foot because the foot is really badly damaged.
Uh-huh. Right.
And so actually, one of the identifying features of a troodontid is that they have this pinched third metatarsal and a
Right.
very
Hmm.
narrow second metatarsal. So it has this very distinctive aspect to its metatarsals. But if you look on the 1932 drawings, they draw
Hmm.
them all the same thickness. And that reflects how bad the specimen is. So if you looked at
Right.
that, you'd say it's not even a troodontid based upon those metatarsal.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of takes some teasing of the specimen to say,
Right.
oh, it does have these features, but it doesn't really have any diagnostic features either. So,
Hmm.
um, so it's kind of like we could replace Troodon with Stenocosaurus, but then we kind of have the same problem. We have another bad specimen as our type specimen.
Right. So
So
your
our petition is to
solution,
say we're going to put
yeah.
the solution is we're saying here's all this stuff from the birthday site. It's different ages. It's most of the skeleton though. Um, there's skull parts and tail parts and leg parts and arm parts and vertebrae
Hmm.
in between. Let's make that the type specimen, and you know, and we can go from there. So we
Nice.
want to call that Troodon formosus, and then people have things that they think differ from that, then they can
Uh-huh.
name something new. But if we have this quagmire of what Troodon is, then we're always kind of on squishy ground. So it's like let's establish this, and then
Right.
we have good reason to say, is Stenocosaurus different or not? Is
Hmm.
Latimonatrix different or not? We can go and say, okay, we can at least compare it to this material and judge from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you said that paper's in press right now. That's exciting, Dave. Holy cow.
Yeah, the it's kind of like we're describing some Troodon material from the two medicine and kind of
Hmm.
saying, oh, this is what we want to do. Petition the ICZN. That's the paper that's in press. And then
Uh-huh.
the petition is actually in the hands of the ICZN. So they're weighing what happens next to it.
So they're going to rule upon
Yeah.
that at some point in the nearish future, you know.
Yeah, the process is that they would publish it in the Bulletin of Zoological Nomenclature.
Hmm.
And then there's like this long period where people get to comment on it. So
Oh,
you can write
interesting.
in and say, I study blah, 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 and here's why I
Uh-huh.
like this, or, I study this, and here's why I don't like this, or here's where I think they're going to be problems. And so they kind of like, it's there for the scientific discourse. And then
Right.
after usually years,
Hmm.
they will then make a decision. So,
Interesting. I didn't
yeah.
realize it worked like that nowadays. I've read Gould's essays about
Yeah.
naming and stuff, and I want to say there was a different process back then, deciding on whether or not to keep the name boa constrictor, for instance. That's kind of a famous case, but that's
Huh.
cool. It's neat that it's kind of a democratic process in that sense. Like it's consensus based. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
I
That's
mean,
really cool.
the idea is that the names have a practical value, right? If they're
Yeah.
not, if they don't work in a practical sense, I mean, we have this material, we
Yeah.
think it's one species, we have to call it something.
Uh-huh.
right? So it's like what works for the community. Yeah. If it doesn't work
Right.
for the community, then yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
You can see there might be issues. It could be that there's two species together. We talked about different growth trajectories.
Sure.
Could those be two species? But you have to start somewhere, I guess, is where
Yeah.
you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's really cool. That's exciting. I look forward to reading that soon. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for it. Send me a
Okay,
copy if
I'll
you
let you know. I'll
remember.
keep you posted.
I'd
Yeah,
appreciate that.
we'll
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So as when we're talking about Troodon versus Stenotosaurus versus uh, Latin Venatrix, do we have any kind of way to distinguish them? Are they morphologically or stratigraphically distinct? They look different, or are they from different times? What separates them except
Yeah.
for geography?
So Van der Ries and Curry published the paper on describing Latinatrix,
Uh huh.
and they have that as higher stratigraphically within the dinosaur park formation from Stenotosaurus.
Okay.
So they kind of they're throwing out Troodon in their paper and
Uh
saying,
huh.
oh, we'll use Stenotosaurus. And they kind of say, oh, the two medicine stuff could be the same as Stenotosaurus,
Uh
but they
huh.
kind of leave that as like to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they kind of argue that there's stratigraphic separation between those two.
Uh huh.
The challenge with the lattimenatrix material is that the most diagnostic stuff is the frontal,
Uh
right? So the
huh.
top bone in the skull.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but they're not really associated with other material.
Mm-hmm.
So the association is kind of saying, we're going to take the stratigraphic zone, here's a frontal from it, here's a pelvis from it, and kind of construct an animal from it.
Uh huh.
Um, so there's not really a good uh, there's specimen that has lots of elements.
Hmm.
Uh,
Gotcha. Yeah. It's the material's kind of scanty.
yeah, Cullen. There's
Yeah.
a follow-up paper by Cullen et al., and they questioned whether the frontal was really diagnostic.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of felt that if you compared it to the Stengosaurus frontal,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you could say this is here and Latinatrix is here, but then there's all this stuff in between, and I'm just thinking like some kind of morpho space that kind of
Uh huh.
blurs the lines, and it's sort of difficult to say.
Gotcha.
And I guess we like Jason Hogan's been working with me on the Troodon material. I guess our interpretation is that we want to establish the two medicine stuff as Troodon formosus,
Mm-hmm.
and then feel like that then makes the debate a little bit more concrete when it comes to lattimenatrix. Is that a real thing or not?
Sure.
Um, because then you can find a specimen and say it has this feature, this feature, this feature. How do those compare to the two medicine Troodon formosus stuff?
Uh
Is it
huh.
the same or different? So I mean, I guess we're open to lattimenatrix. Could be a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
but needs more material that's associated. We're not. So
Gotcha.
I guess we're not really ruling that out.
Uh huh.
The
Go ahead.
stratigraphy question
Yeah.
is interesting. So um, the two medicine stuff really is time equivalent though to lattimenatrix.
Huh. Is that what was in your new
So
paper that just came out?
I don't. Yeah, I mean it doesn't really get into that, but
Okay.
yeah, there's that paper there. Yeah, I can talk about that too. But
Mm-hmm.
so it could mean that those two animals, if there are two separate animals, just coexisted and are separated geographically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. But I guess I feel like you got to let the specimens sort themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of let the morphology do the talking at a certain point. Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you talk about that new paper a little bit? The importance of
Yeah. So it's
biostratigraphy
it's
in the
it's
companion.
Rogers
Yeah.
et al. It's actually going to
Uh
be
huh.
2025, although it's been out for a couple months,
Right. Yeah.
digitally. But I think the actual publication date is going to be 2025. So it's Ray
Gotcha.
Rogers. He's a geologist at Macalester College in
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota. I feel like he's the major driver of this paper.
Mm-hmm.
He's done all the legwork, measuring sections in the two medicine and the Judith River, and
Mm-hmm.
he's gone everywhere and walked everything and measured everything geologically in those formations.
Uh huh.
Um, and then Ramazzani provided these radiometric dates. So it's sort of like Ray is saying,
Right.
here's these sections, here are
Uh
these
huh.
ash beds, gave and then got these dates.
Really good
The
dates too, from what it seems like. You've got Tim's for that. It's really precise. I mean, it seems like that's going to be kind of the gold standard.
Yeah.
It's
The
exciting.
cool part is that it's like one lab doing all the dates.
Uh huh.
It's a bigger project. So this is just one part of it because they did Comparowitz Formation and the Judith
Mm-hmm.
River, and they did Dinosaur Park Formation up in Canada,
Uh
so
huh.
that we can then kind of correlate across the Campanian, from Alberta down to Utah. They may even gotten farther south
Huh.
um, through these series of papers.
Uh huh.
So the two medicine paper. Ray invited me. He had Jack Horner on there, kind of
Mm-hmm.
as the paleontologist to put in specimens that we thought were important, so we kind of sort them out in a temporal
Mm-hmm.
sense. So Jack had already um, recognized like zones within the two medicine, like a Maiasaura zone, where Maiasaura was the main hadrosaur. You go above, then you get Procerolophus and Gripposaurus and
Right.
other types. So he had kind of recognized these things, but actually it was kind of neat to have radiometric dates and then Ray recognizing sort of geologic features, sedimentological features that could then also pin those down. That might be easier for paleontologists walking the field to say, "Oh, I'm now in this member versus the other member." Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Cool. Well, what's the if you were to boil it down to a take-home message, something that's new and interesting about dinosaur biostratigraphy from this paper, what would it be? What was surprising about it to you when
Um.
everything was synthesized at the end?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say it puts numbers on everything,
Uh huh.
and it definitely is zonation through the whole formation.
Yeah.
Um, I think it leads to the opportunity. So Zach Hannenbaum is a grad student of mine now working on orodromines that had been lumped together. Any orodromines from the two medicine was considered Orodromius maculae.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
he'd been finding some subtleties like, oh, these specimens seem kind of different
Uh
from
huh.
these specimens from a different locality. And now with that stratigraphy, it's like, oh, that's because they're a
They're from
million and a
different
half
times.
years younger.
Yeah.
And kind of opens up the idea that, oh, it could be a different animal,
Uh huh.
so I think that we'll get a better understanding of evolution of dinosaurs through the two medicine.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to sort of lumping them together, either in these broad zones that Jack had, but now you can really kind of refine that into saying,
Right.
okay, what's happening here?
Uh huh.
One of the surprising things is there's this lake interval
Uh huh.
that occurs that Ray says you can identify throughout the formation, and things sedimentation slows down. So it's kind of a compressed in the time period where there's not a
Okay.
lot of sedimentation, um, but it spans like a million plus years.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a compressed interval. Ray doesn't really have a good explanation as to why that's happening geologically, but Egg Mountain
Huh.
sits in there.
Uh huh.
And then going back to like something I haven't talked about, but the taphonomic interpretation of Egg Mountain, it fits really interesting well with the stuff that we dug up there at Egg Mountain. So it's kind of a cool story there. But so I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see how things fall in. It just gives us this better
Right.
framework
Uh huh.
for all sorts of stuff. So Troodon, um, our best specimens are kind of narrowly placed high in the formation.
Uh huh.
We have the small juvenile and embryos from Egg Mountain. So they're a million and a quarter years earlier. It's possible that maybe there's evolution, maybe it's not Troodon formosus.
Uh
We
huh.
just don't have adult material to go with those.
Gotcha.
At the ontogenetic level that they are at, we can't really make any distinguishing features.
Uh
But
huh.
one day maybe a Troodon will show up, an adult Troodon will show up down there, and you go, oh, it's changed or evolved or whatever. It's not
Sure.
quite the same. Could be. Yeah.
Interesting. That makes me wonder too. Speaking about the validity of Troodon as a name, do we have a good stratigraphic sense for where uh, Hayden collected the original, you know, Troodon tooth? Do we have any idea where this thing is from,
He just
or
says
when it's from? I should
near.
say.
Yeah, it's in the Judith River. He just says near the Judith River uh, proper, but that doesn't know whether it means like is it in the Missouri River or near the. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Uh,
think he included a section in the publication, so yeah.
yeah. We don't have any field books for him. He doesn't have any
Uh
field
huh.
book. I think there was some instance where a barrel of specimens in his field books
Uh huh.
um, fell off the back of a boat and was lost. I don't know. I don't know if it's possible to find those. I don't know. It's like one of those.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Interesting. Uh,
So yeah.
have
So
you? Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I say Van der Reest and Curry were like, oh, that if you're going to name a neotype, it has to be like from near the nearest spot to that.
Uh huh.
Um, and we think, the two medicine's close enough,
Yeah, sure.
like if with the neotype, it kind of says that the tooth and its location just they're like whatever.
Uh huh.
They don't matter anymore. They're really
Right.
not part of it. We've been calling this stuff Troodon. We go with that. If someone finds new material in the Judith River and it
Uh
looks
huh.
different, then they name a new taxon. It's not
Right.
so it's sort of shifting the name to a different material that's more meaningful than just a tooth.
I like that, and I like how it's. I don't know. I believe pretty strongly that rules should exist to serve people and not the other way around. And I kind of feel like this is a good example of that, where the name Troodon is already in really wide use, and getting rid of it entirely, I don't know who that really serves. But that's my
That's
opinion. So,
Yeah. I mean, and basically, I kind of followed Curry 1985 for 20 years
yeah.
and published on this as Troodon and Troodon and Troodon.
Uh
And
huh.
then I was kind of like a little upset that they're like, oh, now he's going to throw out the name. I'm like, what? Like, I understand
Yeah.
why. Like, like it's the, if everything goes back to this single tooth, you can't really do anything with it.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
understand why that's an issue. So I feel like the neotype is a good way to maintain stability, keep the name,
Uh huh.
that people, there's lots of people, not paleontologists that know that name. So it'd be good. I think it's valuable to keep it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Best of luck with the whole
Yeah.
ICGN thing. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think most people will look at it from like, the way you do, that it's sort of a practical solution.
I
There
hope
might be a
so.
couple of
Yeah.
people really close to it that might
Uh
want to do
huh.
something different. Um, but in general, I think like if you're a supporter of Latinatrix, it makes it easier for you because then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now I know this is Troodon. It's just like, okay, now I can compare it to it.
Uh
So I
huh.
think it makes it better. Then with Styracosaurus, which is this ugly foot, it's like, it's like the bad tooth or the ugly foot. They're both bad. So it's like, okay, now we have something concrete. Yeah.
Uh huh. I like that a lot. Yeah. Uh. Um. We were talking. Well, shoot. Before we brought you on today, we watched that old Paleo World episode about Troodon, dinosaur genius, and all that. So I want to ask you a few things about that. In I don't know if we can call it popular culture, but in kind of like popular paleontological media, there's this theme, this running theme, this meme almost of Troodon being a hyper intelligent dinosaur, smartest of the dinosaurs, really, really big endocranium. How much of that, in your view, as a Troodontid researcher, is legit and how much of it is kind of overhyped? Did Troodon actually have an abnormally large brain for a Maniraptoran theropod, or does it just have a really good press agent, so to speak?
I think the question there you said was, does it have a really big brain for a Maniraptoran?
Yeah.
And and I guess I would say, if you step back and say among dinosaurs, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it has a big brain. It's probably not that exceptional among Maniraptorans, though, right? I think
Huh.
you're getting the brainiest. I don't know, whatever. What word am I looking for? You're getting bigger brains
Uh
as
huh.
you get towards birds, and that
Right.
and the brain shape is taking on a more avian configuration as you move towards the bird ancestry.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's kind of the important point. And there's been a number of people done, like Larry Whitmer,
Mm-hmm.
um, the folks at the American Museum did some scans and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, blanking on her name. Um, to show that, we're getting these features that are, bigger cerebral hemispheres and other attributes that
Mm-hmm.
are looking more like a modern bird brain.
Uh
Yeah.
huh.
I think there's been some interesting work though, right? Because and again, going back to our mammal bias, we have giant cerebral hemispheres,
Mm-hmm.
and our brains tend to be bigger for body mass than they are in birds.
Right.
But we've now found that bird brains have actually packed in more
They're
neurons.
just more
And
efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a better computer, a smaller computer. And so people are rethinking like, oh, bird smarts, thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, oh, there's these crows, various corvids that use tools and
Yeah.
that seem to have some really good smarts. And so from a mammal bias, oh, the brains aren't as big, but they do have these packed neurons. And so it's hard to say how smart a Troodon could have been or not. I don't know
Uh-huh.
from our perspective now, but I think there's potential that in the shape of the structure, but then potentially even like how it's packed, it may have had these higher neuron density as well in a more avian
Mm-hmm.
fashion. Yeah.
Gotcha. And that's really difficult to test from just a fossil. Looking at the endocranium, determine the number of neurons in
Neurons,
there.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's tricky. Okay, well that makes sense. So I guess the verdict is Troodon may be a little bit overhyped in terms of its smarts. Nothing against Troodon in particular, but just other dinosaurs were probably not quite as brainless as they've been made out to be.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think those papers from uh Hobson did one in like 1980s. He had a couple
Mm-hmm.
papers on dinosaur brains. Where armored dinosaurs are pretty small and
Right. Yeah.
sauropods are on the bottom end there too.
Uh-huh.
Um, Ornithopods, though, start to show some fairly large brains, some like hadrosaurs and other things.
Hmm.
And then tyrannosaurs,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time they were coelurosaurs, small-bodied theropods,
Mm-hmm.
had the biggest brains, and some of those are Maniraptorans today. So I mean, they kind of were
Mm-hmm.
laying down some of that general patterns of braininess. Yeah,
Gotcha. So when we were watching this episode of Paleo World, of course, it gets into
yeah,
Dale Russell's Dinosauroid thought
yeah.
experiment, which today we look at it. I don't know. I can be kind about it and say it seems quaint. What's your take, your hot take on the whole Dinosauroid thing as somebody who works on troodontids? Uh, yeah.
I think it's a good thought exercise.
Uh
It's
huh.
not really science in the way of testing anything, but it is one of those things where you forces you to open your mind a little bit and think about what are the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, he there was a Dale Russell volume that was put out.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away a few years ago, and we wrote a paper about Troodon in there,
Huh.
um, and and kind of went off a little bit on a tangent in some
Uh huh.
ways as a salute to that dinosauroid.
Uh huh.
Um, so we talked about tool use in modern birds,
Sure. Yeah.
and like could Troodon have used a tool?
Uh huh.
Um, and would we recognize it in the fossil record? So that's
Uh
kind
huh.
of out there. I'd say it's pretty far out there. But I
It's
guess
fun
there's
though.
like,
I mean, yeah, and
yeah,
it's thought provoking. Like, if we had a little bit more time, if I'd started when I was hoping to start today, we would have watched that clip of the Troodontid from Prehistoric Planet, narrated by David Attenborough. I think Darren Naish, it may have been his idea to have the Troodon start or spread a forest fire. In that
huh,
episode, have you seen this clip, Dave?
no,
Sure
Yeah,
did.
it's up in Alaska, I think. But there's a
huh,
forest fire and there's a troodontid running around, and then it picks up a burning stick in order to
huh,
spread the fire further, in order to flush some
wow,
mammals out of hiding so
oh,
it can eat them.
huh,
There's several birds today that do this kind of thing.
huh,
But I wonder if that's directly referencing your paper here. It very well might have been, because it seems to me like oftentimes Darren Naish, for this series, he would take a particular publication and kind of run with it,
huh,
in order to
oh
have it
no,
be based on something, so it's not
yeah,
entirely speculative. Yeah.
yeah,
You should check it out. Yeah, I think you'd get a
huh,
kick out of it. Yeah.
huh. So I mean, we have these mammal accumulations from Egg Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that look like regurgitates, like that someone ate mammals and spat them out.
Wow.
So we have two examples. One has three skulls
Uh huh.
uh, of Alphodon. They're
Okay.
they're they're about 85% skull material, and
Uh huh.
largely it's the tooth-bearing portion. So it's like maxillas and dentaries and not much else. And the other one
Yeah.
has 11 individuals. Um,
And they're just
yeah, so
in a mass like that?
The three one was in a mass. The other one, Egg Mountain's hard rock, and we found it jackhammering. So it was more. We don't really
Sure.
have any geometry to it. So we have.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I called it the dinner plate because it was sort of an area about this big, and
Uh-huh.
all this material kind of came from there, and I couldn't really reassemble anything.
Sure.
Um, but also, again, it has that same high proportion of skull material,
Uh-huh.
and mostly, tooth-bearing elements. And they do have some acid etching, so it probably came out of, came through
Very
some.
cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's practically a done deal then. It was a regurgitate. If they're acid etched, really
yeah,
interesting. Wow. Huh.
yeah. So I mean, they're kind of cool. It kind of matches raptorial, diurnal raptors kind of produce pellets that are concentrated like that. So
Yeah.
we don't know whether they really belong to Troodon or not. They could belong to
Uh-huh.
Troodon. That was kind of a suggestion of Dale, kind of going back to Dale Russell,
Yeah.
that Troodon had these big eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It has relatively weak jaws. It's got these funky teeth.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have big, bone crunching kind of jaws. He thought
Right.
maybe it was, kind of like a nocturnal or a crepuscular kind of hunter. It has
Mm-hmm.
delicate, legs that could be hunting around for small prey.
Uh-huh.
Um, and mammals might have been of it. So that's sort of a possibility for these specimens.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And I remember in one of Denver Fowler's publications, um, talking about the hind limbs of troodontids. I remember watching a talk that he gave about this once. He said they have very fast feet. So the articulation of the pedal phalanges, I think it's got like the ginglymoid condition. So they seem really flexible and just kind of really agile. Not like heavily built like in dromaeosaurs. And so
Yeah,
yeah.
they kind of go away from the ginglymoid. So
Oh,
like
do they? Oh,
yeah,
okay. I was
so
getting that mixed
so
up. Okay.
uh like a dromaeosaur, Deinonychus toe bones have those big,
Uh-huh.
like knuckly.
That huge articular
Oh,
surface on it. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas like some of the ones in Troodon are like a paint roller. Like
Huh.
it's just a smooth surface, and it matches
Right.
really well with things like ostriches that
Uh-huh.
have it too. So I don't know what the so one might be more resisting prey, like
Torsion or yeah.
yeah, and the other one is
Yeah.
more just, although you can't really twist it and torsion either on the rollers,
Huh.
but I don't know why. Maybe it's more efficient. I don't know. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Going back to the idea of
Interesting.
being fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Uh,
I mean, those two groups both have that retractable claw,
yep.
but the rest of the
Hypertrophy
foot
digit
is
2, yeah.
really kind of functionally very different.
Uh-huh.
The Deinonychus or Velociraptor metatarsals are kind of short and squat when you compare it to
Yep.
something like a Troodon, which is almost like a bird cannon
Uh-huh.
bone.
And like you were
So
talking about earlier, they've got that pinched metatarsal 3. It's almost like it's almost arctometatarsalia, right? Like in tyrannosaurs and ornithomimids, where those
yeah, it
metatarsals
is.
get squished together.
Yeah, it is Arctometatarsalia. But the
Oh,
weird part
okay.
is that the instead of having sort of a symmetry like you'd see in a T-Rex between the
Uh-huh.
2 and 4, the
Yeah.
2 is really narrow because it supports the retractable claw. So it's sort of like this
Uh-huh.
weird. I don't know. They're funky. They're really
Yeah.
really distinctive.
That
Anyway,
is
I was
really
bringing that
interesting.
up because the Dale Russell, he
Yeah.
proposed this mammal hunting, and we were like, oh, this could be mammal hunting evidence in Troodon at Egg Mountain, which is kind of
Uh-huh.
cool. Yeah, and then we kind of went off onto that. Could it use tools, and did it have the grasping? He kind of said that may have had like opposable
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And we don't really see evidence for that. It does have like the weird intersection, like the
Uh-huh.
one kind of intersects with the other one, but I don't know whether that means you could grasp. I don't know how that functions, sort of.
And I've wondered whether Deinonychosaurs, whether they could actually move their digits 2 and 3 independently, because in birds those are stuck together like this.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if anybody's really looked at that recently, but maybe that's a project that I
Huh.
should do soon, trying to
Huh.
figure out in dromaeosaurs and troodontids where their
Yeah.
digits 2 and 3 actually stuck together, and only the digit 1, the thumb, is free.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how you'd go about testing that, but it's something that's been on my mind recently. And
Yeah. You might look at modern animals that have lost that independence.
uh huh,
There's like the weird marsupial toes. The feet are kind of weird. The two,
uh huh,
I don't know which ones go together.
huh.
Um, might be digits 3 and 4 kind of
Uh-huh.
are linked together. And then I think maybe some of the tree kangaroos get into weird digit stuff as well.
Interesting. Huh.
You know.
I'll look into that. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Um, Here, going back to our troodonted teeth. And how are you doing on time, by the way? I don't want to keep you for too
I,
long.
I'm good. I got nowhere to go other than talk about Toronto.
All right. Well, we really appreciate it. Can we get some appreciation for Dave in the chat too, everybody? Um, yeah. Uh, these big denticles on troodonted teeth like this, I've heard these suggested as possible evidence that they were maybe omnivorous. What's your take on that? Like, could this actually indicate some degree of herbivory? And might that help explain the weird anatomy of troodontids in general? They're not like these, big bruisers of predators like Dromaeosaurus, where you're talking about their kind of stockier limb bones, and they kind of seem, like they're better built as predators than troodontids potentially of larger prey.
Yeah.
What's your take on the denticles, first of all?
On the
Yeah.
dentals, they're weird. It's amazing that like a tooth like your type specimen, right? The tooth is
Yeah.
only half-inch long, but the
Mm-hmm.
denticles there are bigger than you'd find on a T-Rex tooth, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Which a
They're
T-Rex is way
nuts.
big. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some function. There are a number of troodontids that lack denticles or have
Mm-hmm.
reduced denticles. Um,
Huh.
but some things like Xanabazar and Sornithoides, those have kind of very similar teeth to Troodon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know. There was Will Abler uh, did these experiments where he made tooth models,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like he made casts of theropod teeth, and then he took off the serrations.
Uh-huh.
So he had some with serrations and some without, and then he
Uh-huh.
had he had like like the steak, and
Uh-huh.
he would stick this tooth in it, and then he had weights to see how much force was needed to like cut through the
Yeah.
steak. And so he actually did, tested the denticle, worth in
Uh-huh.
terms of force and found that, yeah, having denticles, they're easy to cut through. And Troodon was
Huh.
in there. And
Uh-huh.
those denticles in Troodon make it better at cutting flesh. That's
Interesting.
point one, right? And then
Yeah.
Holtz did these comparative studies and said, yeah, it looked kind of like more like an omnivore
Mm-hmm.
where some plant material would be involved.
Right. Were you an
And then
author
if
on
you
that
look at the
paper
whole,
too?
no,
No, okay. That was a different one. Sorry.
yeah. And then if you look at
Okay.
the whole dentition as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
Troodon has added teeth. So it has about 130 some
Got so many tooth
functional
rows.
teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at one time. So it's added lots of teeth.
Uh-huh.
And then in some ways you can think of those big denticles as almost like cusps, like it's adding cusps that
Sure.
point up, right? You have those nice curvatures that you just showed.
Uh-huh.
Um, and among mammals, there's very few mammals that add teeth and add cusps to the teeth. One example is the bat-eared fox,
Uh-huh.
and it
Huh.
primarily eats insects,
Uh-huh.
and all those extra bumps are kind of good at breaking down insect
Sure. Okay.
stuff. So
Yeah.
so I don't really know. So I kind of feel like there's an insectivory, an omnivory with herbivores,
Uh-huh.
uh, efficiency for cutting flesh. All those are kind of in there. So I'm fine if it has a more omnivorous diet that's like a little bit of anything.
Uh-huh.
Probably small game is probably
Uh-huh.
its future, is what I would say. But it might
Uh-huh.
have been eating plants as well. Could be eating some insects too. I kind of feel like we need a better, like a thorough functional analysis of the whole dentition to
Right.
really grasp of things. Because like any tooth, you can kind of go the next tooth or a couple teeth down, and it looks quite a bit different.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you could study that tooth, and it might tell you one thing, and then this tooth might tell you a different thing. So I think we need kind of a broader perspective on it, which might be challenging to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, but there are some methods out there these days that are looking at dentition. So like
Mm-hmm.
mammal dentitions that like Greg Wilson is doing those kind of studies. So maybe something like that has to be done.
Huh. Has anybody done any isotopic work on enamel and troodontid teeth?
We have some stuff unpublished
Uh-huh.
uh, from Egg Mountain,
Cool.
and it actually it turns out like it should be like the ultimate carnivore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I kind of wondered if that could be um, because the level of what it's eating. So if it's eating
Huh.
mammals
Uh-huh.
that are largely insectivores, that
Oh.
it could have the appearance of like being a super top predator, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to like if you ate Orodromius or
Who's
Maiasaura
eating plants themselves?
eating
Yeah.
plants, you would
Yeah.
look like less of a carnivore than Troodon, which would be like, I'm the ultimate predator, even more than Tyrannosaur. You know? But
Uh-huh.
meanwhile, I'm eating mammals that are eating insects. So yeah, so we haven't sorted that out. We haven't published that yet, so I don't know.
Uh-huh.
That's one idea I have.
That's
Uh,
exciting though, yeah. Yeah.
something to go. Where teeth?
What's that?
Oh, I don't. There was something I wanted to get back to, but now I'm
Yeah.
fuzzy as to what it was. Yeah,
But if you remember it, please interrupt.
yeah.
But it's interesting also that they seem to, at least compared to dromaeosaurs, they're evolving from the same ancestor. Troodontids seem to be reducing their tooth size, increasing the size of the denticles, and also increasing the tooth count in the mouth, which is interesting. I know there
Yeah.
are other groups of theropods like I think it's abelisaurs, things like Majungasaurus. They tend to decrease their tooth size, it seems, and then increase the number of teeth, and maybe that has something to
Huh.
do with like they could replace their teeth more rapidly because they're eating tougher
Uh-huh.
stuff or something like
Huh.
that. Um, but yeah, Majungasaurus has got really small. You know what? Hang on just a second. I can show you. Let me grab it.
Cool.
Yeah, they tend to have really small teeth compared
Huh.
to compared to the size of their skull. And that's been
I
commented
like
on
it that you
before.
can whip out a skull of a Majungasaurus.
That's why I have these. Yeah, it's all
Oh,
for science
yeah,
outreach.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I 3D printed that by the way.
Huh.
Yeah, that's opened up so many doors for me. Being able to just print specimens, it's fantastic.
Uh-huh.
I'll see if I can paint this up and send it to you. By the way, Dave.
Oh,
I
oh.
sorry, I got that email from you like 8 days late, so I'll
That's all
do that
right.
and maybe the Zanabazar skull too. Am I saying that right? Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. Yeah, I said it, and then I was like, I don't know if that said it right either. Yeah.
Theropod formerly known as Thoraornithoides.
Sort authorities.
Um,
Yeah, I think there's still sort authorities still exist. I think they
yeah, yeah.
split one. One is sort authorities mongoliensis, and the other one is Zanabazar or something.
Zanabazar Jr. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right, right.
Yeah.
Because it came
That's
later
yeah.
after that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Kind of a goofier question. Do you think Troodon would make a good pet?
I think probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe unless you hand raised it from infancy.
I'm just kind
Uh,
of picturing like a 100-pound raccoon walking around your house, getting into
yeah,
everything. It's a little too
yeah,
clever to be
yeah.
to be trusted. Yeah.
I kind of think of them as like a magpie, and
Oh shoot, yeah.
kind of crafty and and a little like I feel like magpies like they're not too intimidated. They're kind of like
Uh-huh.
I got a
They've got
handle
too
on the
much attitude. Yeah.
situation. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
so maybe Troodon be nice until it's like age 2 or 3, and then at that point you gotta get rid of it or something.
Oh boy. Didn't Jack have a pet magpie at some point? I feel like that was in the last couple of years before I left Montana, but he was like
Yeah,
hand raising some
yeah,
magpies.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a
It's pretty
friend
funny.
and they got one, like a nest got destroyed or something, and they had one in
Hmm.
it, and it learned to yell. It like mimicked their mom yelling at her sibling who lived in the basement to get up for school, and it would imitate that cry like you gotta get up. And it's like,
Oh boy. Yeah. Imagining a Troodon doing that is pretty funny. Um, Shoot.
I could see the hind limbs of Troodon being to cover more ground. That
Huh.
it could be, like sorry, like I think Kristen Janis had a study where she was looking at limb proportions through time between um,
Hmm.
carnivores and herbivores. And
Hmm.
herbivores always had these like really elongate limbs. And she
Right.
kind of argued that it wasn't just for predator avoidance, but efficiency in feeding, that they have to feed constantly. And so they just
Oh.
need, like they just need to
Hmm.
be more efficient in their locomotion because they're going to be out there grazing a big chunk of
Right.
the day. And so it's a balance between escape, but also kind of efficiency of locomotion. Oh, I
That
know.
is really
I was going to
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
going back to feeding. There is
Uh-huh.
this really cool. This is Michael Ryan described the site of baby hadrosaur bones, and there's like 30 some troodon teeth associated with it, and nothing else. Um, and that,
Huh.
so I kind of feel like, that sort of fits with the idea of them feeding small prey, like baby
Uh-huh.
hadrosaurs, mammals, kind of the small end of things is where they
Right.
might be feeding. Yeah.
Interesting. Could that be, well, I don't know. We're getting speculative here, but the fact that you've got Troodon and Maiasaura at the same nesting site at Egg Mountain, do we know that they were actually there in the same horizon?
There are some troodon teeth with the myosaur nests.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
some there's some hadrosaur bones
Mm-hmm.
at Egg Mountain. There's sort of two ways to use Egg Mountain.
Yeah.
There's like the one which is just this hill. That's
Uh-huh.
like the
Oh, I
the
see what you
strict,
mean. If we're
and that's
using
Egg Mountain
the term
proper.
Egg Mountain, yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of times when we are back in Bozeman referring to I'm going to go up to Egg Mountain,
Uh-huh.
it kind of just means that general area.
The Willow Creek
It's kind of
anticline.
the Willow Creek Anticline, yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you want to use it. And now that we have radiometric dates, there are some, a better handle on the temporal arrangement of things up in the Willow Creek Anticline. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but there are hadrosaur eggs um, at Egg Mountain, and even some
Mm-hmm.
hadrosaur baby bones there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do we have a better understanding of the taphonomy of Egg Mountain, by the way? I remember reading some stuff written in the 90s, around like 94, that there may have been a big pyroclastic flow or something like that. That might be the Camposaur bone bed site. Um,
Yeah, I got a leg cramp.
oh, sorry.
Hang on.
We've been doing this for a while. So yeah, feel free to pace around for a little bit or something. But yeah, let me just say for anybody.
Yeah. So I mean, there's
Okay, go
the
ahead.
big Myosaur bed,
Uh-huh.
um, which was like a big mud flow,
Yeah,
uh,
okay.
a debris flow.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of charcoal in there and soot in the
Mm-hmm.
bone bed, and so it looks like um, probably there was a big fire first. This happens in
Huh.
California sometimes. You get these big fires
Right.
come through,
And then that destabilizes the
destabilizes the
hillsides. Yeah.
soil. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
then a mudslide happens afterwards. So I think that's the best interpretation of how that happened. So that's
Gotcha.
not at Egg
Okay.
Mountain proper,
Uh-huh.
right? That's a different horizon. So Egg Mountain proper, Jack first thought it was an Orodromius nesting colony,
Mm-hmm.
um, with site fidelity and colonial nesting.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I don't think, and that was with the Orodromius eggs, but now we know they're Troodon eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I haven't really seen that. But I've seen evidence of all sorts of things nesting there, different
Mm-hmm.
vertebrates, tons of invertebrates that are digging down the soils. So I think
Right.
it's just a good environment to preserve nesting behavior of anything, invertebrates and
Mm-hmm.
vertebrates.
Gotcha.
And then these radiometric dates says that interval has really slow sedimentation rates. And so I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that
Okay.
adds to it too, in
Mm-hmm.
that we're not having a lot of deposition, so these things are kind of like over printed on themselves. It's just like there's just lots of it
Gotcha.
because we're not depositing lots of sediments as
Uh-huh.
well.
Huh.
Yeah.
And you said that we don't really know why there's that low sedimentation rate. It's you can't directly tie that to just like sea level rise or lack of accommodation space in the basin or something like that. It's got to be something
Yeah.
else.
You have to talk to Ray on that one. But it
Okay.
it occurs about when we get the transition from sea level regression, the seas going out,
Uh-huh.
and then seas coming back in. So it's just about that change time, that between regression to transgression.
Gotcha.
Um, and I don't know if that has to do with it, if there's
Uh-huh.
that whatever mechanism, locally. I mean, I think some of those are sea level rises are more global control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have to talk to Ray if the dates, yeah,
Hmm.
match up with global changes, or if there's like local basinal kind of controls on sea level rise and fall. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm excited to actually read the paper. I haven't had time to do it yet, but I've been looking forward to it. Jim Kirkland called me
Yeah.
yesterday. We were talking about some stuff, and he emailed me the paper. He's like, "Dan, you got to read this." So people are excited about it,
uh,
Dave. You should be proud. Yeah.
uh,
Uh,
I was happy that I got to be part of it. Is how I look at it.
yeah.
Ray,
Yeah.
Ray I think is the one that could be proud about it. I'm glad that I could contribute to it. That and say these specimens are important and kind of get involved that way.
Nice. Yeah. Um, so we've heard how you pronounce the name Troodon. You don't say
Yeah.
Tridoon. Um,
True. Yeah. Yeah. True. Dude. Yeah.
um, since this is a genus that you work on, what other pronunciations have you heard? Was there any particularly amusing ones or anything? Um,
No, I guess I haven't really heard too many. I mean, some people want to make a double O, like a Trudon,
yeah, yeah.
Trudon,
I've heard
opposed
that
to
a lot
Tro
too by
O.
professionals, troodontid researchers. I've heard them say Trudon.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it used to have the umlaut on there, right? The
yeah,
little, I don't know if it's not really umlaut, but those two dots. And that was to emphasize that it was two different syllables, that it
right,
wasn't
yeah.
Trudon, but it was Troodon. Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
see that in certain places, and then what's funny is in certain publications, well, I think it's the New Yorker. They'll put those little two dots over double O's in other words, like the word cooperate. They'll put it over that,
Oh,
and
really?
it
Oh,
seems so pretentious.
oh,
But
oh,
yeah, like people do that in other words in the English language too, which is really interesting. I think.
oh. I
Yeah,
hadn't seen that,
yeah,
but that's what it is. It really is
yeah,
just a pronunciation guide more than
hmm
anything, that those two dots. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that was was that done away with officially? Did they get rid of the double dots over the double O's?
I mean, I think it's not really part of the official name to have those.
Oh, so somebody threw that in at some point as a pronunciation
Yeah.
helper, and then it just
And then
kind
they
of took
decided
off.
they we shouldn't do it. Yeah. Yeah. A
That's
pronunciation
really
helper.
interesting. So it's not like there was an ICZN ruling saying you cannot do this now or anything like that.
No, but I mean, they say you can't have them.
Oh, okay.
So, so it may have been that they tried to conform
Uh huh.
to the rules. I don't know when the first ICZN came out. I
Hmm.
don't know. We're on like third or
Interesting.
fourth issue.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. For anybody in chat who's wandered in who's not familiar with the full thing, there's a you could almost call it a meme in this channel here where I don't know. I sent you the video, Dave. Tradoon. Um, that there was
Tradoon.
a video that we were watching at one point with this woman talking about it was kind of a clickbaity dinosaur video. She was doing her best. Don't mean to make fun of her at all
Tradoon.
whatsoever. She's given us a wonderful running joke, but yeah, she's talking about some dinosaur names. She doesn't really have a background in dinosaurs, and she pronounces the name Troodon Tridoon, and I just about fell out of my seat laughing when I first heard this, and it's just become this running gag ever since. Um, but yeah, yeah, I everybody in the chat I'm sure would uh they'd really love it if you could say Tridoon real quick, Dave, and then if we could clip that if you're up for it. I
Tradoon
don't mean
Promosis? You want Tradoon Promosis? I don't know. It sounds like Dragoon, like some kind of soldier or something. Yeah.
it
Dragoon.
does, doesn't it? Yeah, with
Yeah.
like some sort of halberd or like big goofy
Yeah.
weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh
I
yeah.
don't know. It sounds better with her accent. I liked her. That I think that.
She does have a very classy accent. It's
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It kind of gives her a an air of authority almost.
Uh-huh.
That only takes her so far, I guess. But yeah. Uh anyway, another kind of slightly goofy question to kind of round things out here. Um so famously Jack Horner, who was your graduate advisor, you were his first graduate student. He was the paleontological consultant on the Jurassic Park trilogy, the first three Jurassic Park films. And the character Alan Grant is kind of based on Jack.
Tradoon.
Um, there's a long-standing rumor, Dave, that one of the characters in the film Jurassic Park 3 is actually based on you.
I
Can you?
don't know who started this rumor. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So you don't know anything
Jack
about this?
would say I'm not his first grad student.
Oh,
Although
really?
I would say I'm his first grad student. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Ray Rogers went to the University of Montana
Right.
while
Uh-huh.
Jack was at Montana State.
Uh-huh.
But Jack kind of he basically did all these projects with Jack. So he did bone bed taphonomy with Jack, and
Uh-huh.
so Jack will say that Ray is his first student. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm really his first student at Montana State. So
Gotcha.
yeah. So I don't know if Ray's the model for that. I don't know. You could ask Ray.
I've had some people very confidently tell me that the character Billy in Jurassic Park 3 is supposed to be Dave Varricchio, but
Huh.
I don't know.
There's one, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it has, I worked I was on the field crew with Paul Sereno,
Uh-huh.
um,
For
uh,
Suchomimus, yeah, famously.
Super Mimist. So I kind of came out around then.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then there was one point where I'd found the Troodon on top of eggs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where I was kind of worried about land ownership
Mm-hmm.
and conflict with commercial collectors. Uh,
Uh,
that I don't know. So I was collecting eggs, which made me think about the Billy puts the eggs in his backpack and then gets into trouble. And so
uh-huh.
I was thinking about like, oh, Jack, I kind of had to call Jack up because I was worried I was in trouble, like collecting these eggs. But anyway, I don't think it has anything to do with me, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. Well, shoot, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate this. I
Sure.
should probably let you go before any more leg cramps set in, and I got to go to the bathroom
All
pretty quick here too. But
right, sounds good. Yeah.
yeah, thanks again, and yeah, thanks very much for being our first interviewee of 2025.
All
Hopefully,
right,
we'll have many
sounds
more,
good.
but we're off to a good start here. Thanks again, Dave. I
All
appreciate
right. Well,
it.
thank you. Appreciate it.
All
Any
right.
love for Troodon, I'm happy for. So,
Tradoon.
all right.
See you around,
See
Dave.
you.
Thanks.
Cheers.